Hey, Kevin, can you hear me? Oh, one sec. I actually got it. Change your settings. So sorry. All right, how about now? Can you hear me?
I was trying to talk with my mic off. Sorry. Can
Meeting. I was about to say, oh no, not again.
Nah, that was a dumbass user error. We used to call it in the IT business.
Got it. All right. Well, Kim's running a little late, and I think other board members are as well because it's 5:55 and Tanya's
Hmm.
the only one here. So we'll probably get started in about 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll hang out. Oh man. So how have you been?
I've been well. Yeah, yeah. I have cupcakes for everyone. Also, if
Oh.
you would like to make a public comment, yeah, you missing out on the cupcakes. Uh,
Oh.
and if you would like to make a public comment, there is a sign up sheet over there on the table for you to add your name, and we'll call you when it's time to make public comment at the end of the meeting.
So when does the new public safety lead take over? January?
Yeah, that's what Captain Faulkner is going to give us some more insight tonight. About the new appointments and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully when they'll start.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have a meeting. um I'm trying to schedule a meeting with the leadership, so you, Kim, the new public safety director, and the new police chief,
Mm-hmm.
the second week of January, technically, so the week of January 6th. So that should be when they start. I know that's when the new administration starts.
Are you gonna hit him over the head real quick, huh?
Yeah, I hope that you guys can formally meet each other before we have our January meeting.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Same, and Kim said she would want it to be in person, so we'll probably ask you guys to go to the public safety building.
Okay.
Talking about when Kim and Kevin are going to meet the new chief of police and public safety director. Yeah, and I feel like you should be there too, Captain Faulkner. Yeah. All right. Well, hi, Krista. All right. Well, I'm gonna go walk the library, make sure no one's like lost or anything like that. Kevin, just come off mute if you would like to say anything.
Gotcha.
Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you. Think maybe traffic is just bad.
Everything is moving.
Yeah. Like no, they're just late. They're just late.
Yeah, I mean, it's, usual.
That time of year, though. Yeah. No real problem.
We're gonna put all four lines up. It's one, it's once. There's each line. You go off Dover, if I remember correctly, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was on for like, okay.
Always busy, but didn't have any congestion, slowing and that kind of thing.
I go down to Dover PD's for trainings.
Oh, okay.
First, third swing of every month, I guess. And I'll tell you, depending on, they start at 6, go 6 to 9. And that traffic going south at 5 o'clock could be,
Oh, yeah.
that'd be very,
Yeah.
very slow going. And some days I'm like, I gotta leave earlier.
Yeah. That going home's a lot easier than getting there.
Oh, I can, oh yeah, for me, absolutely. Yeah, 9:30 is not a lot, there's not a lot of stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we get ready, right? Last, so we got 2 weeks for school, Christmas holiday vacation, are really forward.
Yeah, I have everything under the sun. But once Friday, 3 o'clock is here,
That's right, you get 2 weeks
it's
off.
like successfully needed. In our last meeting. Yeah. Yeah, the president here.
I took the day off, you got everything proud. That's a couple of days.
No.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be able to ship the time, just there, but it's okay. That's the chair I got going next door, but it sounds like a good time.
Yeah. Kevin was saying that I was in probably going it's all one house recommendation.
No, Kim's running a couple minutes late. Jenna's not feeling well.
I tried, everybody was either dying.
Yeah, just let that float before.
All right, welcome board members. Just giving you guys access to your cameras and mics. Let me know if you can hear me just fine, and feel free to test out your mics as well. Hi, Miss Pam. Hey, Deshawn.
Good evening.
Right, we hear you just fine. Um, 6, and you have a quorum now. Technically, 1, 2, 3. Well, no, haven't spoken. Kim, Kim is on her way. She said she'll be here at 6:02. Yeah. Oh, it is 6:02 now.
Okay.
Um, let me check my email really quickly. Doug is trying to get into the meeting. We do have a quorum now. So if you wanted to get started, you could.
Roll call and start. Can you do roll call when we get started?
Yeah, I guess. Yes, Colleen, however, she may be a bit late. She said she's coming from another board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, she works multiple boards.
Yeah. That's good. All right, well,
And so we don't start. What is Director Bond coming? Is the director coming?
Check in with me. I don't.
You're not a
so.
sleeper?
I think this- I would have, assume I would have heard from him if he was. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Just a couple weeks left.
All right, well, we have a quorum, so I'm gonna go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order at 6:06 PM. Good evening, everyone. Small group tonight, but that's okay. We'll take it. Hello to everybody online. I'm Kim Eppiheimer, Chairperson of the Newcastle County Police Accountability Board. We're glad to have everybody with us this evening. I'm gonna turn it over to Kaylin to take roll call for us, please.
All right, Chairwoman Kim Eppiheimer,
I am here.
Vice Chairman Kevin Evans,
Here.
Pamela Brooks Grimes,
Here.
Doug Hamilton, not here yet. He's having some technical issues. He's trying to join via Teams, so hopefully we'll have him soon. Sean Green, Bishop George Gibson, Krista Davis, Deshaun Nixon,
Present.
Dr. Tanya Whittle, Dr. Jenna DiLuterio, absent. She is out sick. Norwood Coleman, absent. Captain Brian Faulkner,
Present.
Director Vaughn Bond. Yeah. Right, that is roll call.
Fantastic, thank you. Next, we're gonna go through approval of the agenda. Take a moment, should have it there, and hopefully you all have it online. Are there any requests to add or remove anything that is on the agenda? All right, hearing none, we will pass the agenda as is. Next is the approval of minutes from the November 19th meeting. These were presented to the board ahead of time. I'll give you a moment. If anyone has any corrections, additions, or things you'd like to have stricken out of the minutes, please say so now. All righty, hearing none, the minutes are also approved. So next on the agenda is old business. One thing I want to make a quick note about is we have compiled our notes from the NACOL training that several of us went to, and there is some neat things that have kind of come out of that. So we're gonna have some recommendations to present to the board to review and to hopefully see if we want to implement anything into the annual report. So we'll have a more thorough report for you all to review before the January meeting. So I appreciate those that went. Thank you for adding your notes in. There's some good stuff there we're excited to share with you all. So we'll get that to you by January. Any other old business that anyone needs to bring up or share?
I just have a question,
Yeah,
and I don't know which business this is old.
that's okay. Permission to ask whatever it is.
Okay, so I know that we do need to do this report,
Yeah,
and it's my understanding that it's due in the spring. It's a timeline to actually complete that with January being like right around the corner. What are our
mhm.
thoughts or intentions, plans,
Yeah.
discussion points? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Not-
No, I appreciate that,
in that
Krista.
particular thing.
Yeah. So I believe April is when we are committed to having a written annual report. And the general assumption of right now, and this is something we will carve out time to talk about, is that the report will reflect what we've accomplished as a board. So sharing how we've gotten set up, what we've done, the committees, the bylaws, and celebrate that, because that alone is something to be really excited about. And then hopefully we will have some recommendations that we all come to agree on to put in there. I know we've had a few things that have already been lifted And so that will be in there as well, but I would caution our, adoring fans to expect, a multi-page, heavily written out document that's gonna have 100+ recommendations to the police, because we just haven't had our chance to really do that. We've spent time getting organized, but we are going to have something, and it will come from the board. So we will carve out time for that discussion. And as we've gone through, hopefully some things have come to fruition for the board members that have sort of made note to say, this is important to me. I want to make sure that we bring this forward to our, in our annual report, to share them with the police force.
Is it a board meeting conversation or is it a sidebar other meeting conversation?
Yeah, so some of that will be decided on us, and part of it is and we'll get to this when we get to reports on staff. Kaylin's gonna help break out a little bit of this, but there is a little uncertainty as to how we are going to be able to handle committees. So it'll either be done at a board meeting or within a subcommittee bringing it forward, and we will figure that out once we know exactly what we can do with committees. Yeah, so to be determined. Yeah, Tanya.
Similar issue, I didn't know if I should ask to rearrange the agenda because I wasn't sure where things really fall in at this.
That's okay.
So this is old, new and other. So maybe conversation about communication and organization before we can have any useful dialogue tonight, because not only with the annual report and needing to figure out logistics on how we're gonna approach that, we've been struggling to make success and progress within the committees, in part because of communication issues, the roadblocks that were discussed, particularly in last meeting. The research committee, we most recently, our meeting was canceled because of, the staff will be reporting on this and updating us. But I feel as though until we actually know what we are and aren't allowed to do, and what, I mean, one of the things that is new business, but it's also old business because it relates to just getting public feedback, which has been an ongoing challenge, is now there's also uncertainty around when the public can approach us and if we are allowed to have individual conversations or have to say, no, you need to direct that to a main line.
Yeah.
So at this point, I feel like, unless there's some direction, this is just fanfare.
I'm sorry. Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, I will come back to it. Thank you. Yes, Deshawn.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'd like to echo the comments from Tanya as well as Christy. I know with the outreach committee, we are wanting to plan our first kind of public forum that is focused on receiving input from the community. Yet we've had to stall those type of discussions because we are uncertain of how we're able to continue with that planning phase. And so my question is, how soon can we receive guidance on this so that we are able to start planning for that informational gathering phase that we need for the outreach committee?
Colleen will be at this meeting shortly. She's running a bit late because she's coming from another board meeting, but she should be here tonight to talk specifically about what Tanya raised. So we will be hearing from Colleen shortly, and you guys can ask all the questions you have.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
A reminder, Colleen is our board attorney. And hopefully we'll have more from her. Unfortunately, to come back to what you said and to what Tanya said, I don't have an answer. I'm at the same point you all are. I think Kaylin is as well. We don't have enough information to know. And so we're going to wait to have our board attorney advise us on what she's learned so that we can figure out next steps.
Sorry for the moment, can we at least educate the rest of the board what is being talked about? Because I feel like no one actually has the full picture because there's been siloed conversations, and in part it's because we're not supposed to have large conversations without, if we meet the quorum, then all of a sudden certain instances, but now we're being told we can't meet in committee. because it needs to be public forum and we're not sure if there's budget for that. And in addition to it, more recently, there's confusion about whether or not we can even receive emails from the public or if they should have to go through a central source. And so at this point, I feel like we need to first put everything on the table and educate all the members on the committee. Like, I don't even know who's on the executive committee versus who's on the different committees when they meet, and I'm on the board.
I'm sorry. I thought Will Davis was our attorney. Who's Colleen?
No.
Yeah, she was here in the last board meeting. She was introduced.
Oh,
She was introduced, yeah.
so Will long term doesn't belong to us. Mike is being replaced by Colleen, not Will. All right, I got it.
Yeah. I would say that from where I stand, I don't think anyone knows a lot of info. We know where things that we have been told. And actually, Tanya, you just summarized it. Everything that you said is what I think I know. We've been told to hold on committees until we know more, just like you said. Do they need to be public or not? Or is there going to be payment? I don't know.
Like, honestly, whenever I became a board member, I didn't even know payment was going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Let alone the stipulation. I think most of us are probably surprised by that. We joined it because we want to actually get work done. But everything that we've encountered, it seems since we've been established, has been roadblocks.
So at this point, we could try to hit what we can, because if we're waiting for a ruling from our lawyer to understand if she can give us those answers, none of us here can answer those, unfortunately. If there are specific questions, we can bring them up, but I caution that we are going to get into a lot of, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And I'm not sure if that is effective, but if people feel very disconnected, very confused, then it's worth at least making sure that as a board, we are on the same page. But I don't know what more I can add to it other than what you all have brought up, to be quite frank. So, Kaylin, is there anything you want to add in?
No, I think you summarized it perfectly.
Okay.
We're all kind of in the same boat right now.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. So I don't know if there's anything else if there's something else, change of topic or on the same topic.
Slightly change of topic.
Slightly change of
Slightly
topic.
change of topic. I know that, we were put in place by the county and the county council has, updates and stuff. Like, are they aware of all the challenges that we have encountered, or as a member of the public, do you know when the next county council meeting is so I can express my concerns just as a civilian?
Yeah, I can email you information about the next county council meeting. It's also on the county website, if you ever just want to look the information up for yourself.
Yeah, just the idea came to me right now.
Yeah, and so as to answer your first question, I actually have to create a report for county council that's due in April, outlining challenges. Every board has to do it, and so I plan to solicit information from you guys to share that information with county council. But like you said, you are welcome to share that information as well at a county council meeting, via email, what have you.
Any other old business? Bless your heart. New business and other business, we're gonna put it all in the same category. I have the right to do that as the chairperson. So anyone have anything, before we move on to reports of staff, that they want to bring to the table for the board, new, other, or old? I don't know if you all can hear, but there is a party happening next door and I'm getting a little jealous. It sounds really fun. I don't know if it's coming through or not. All right. Then I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you, Kaylin, reports of staff fees.
Yeah, so first for the record, I would like to note that Doug Hamilton has joined us via Microsoft Teams, so I'm gonna go ahead and mark him present.
Hi, Doug.
Secondly,
Good evening, everybody. Good evening.
hey, I just have a few updates and reminders just about the training requirements and the recommendations. So as you all may know, your 20-hour training requirement is due by the end of February for most board members, because that's when you were appointed. If you haven't already, please check your emails regarding the next trainings and things of that nature. Yeah, that's it regarding that. We already talked about the recommendations being due by April's meeting. Just want to flag that for you guys. Lastly, I'm missing some HR paperwork from a couple board members. If you can, please send me that paperwork by the end of the year. My colleague also reached out to you guys about a confidentiality form, I believe. So if you can please fill that out. If you didn't get the email, then that means you've done it already. Thank you so much. But if you haven't, please do that by the end of the week. If you don't complete that form, it could result in in your removal from the board.
Thank you.
Kevin Father?
Just on the training requirements, February deadline, I think we may need to check with Colleen. I think that's a bit unreasonable for everybody. While we were started in February,
Agree.
board didn't get to a position where we even discussed training
Right.
until April.
The law-
May, right? So I would go out on a limb and say that if we were to speak to Director Moriarty opposed to as the umbrella for some of these requirements, I think they would give a little grace on the February deadline.
I'm gonna CC you on that email to Sean, because the law says that they have to complete 20 hours by their appointment date, not the first meeting date. Yeah,
Mhm.
Colleen and we looked into it already.
Yeah.
Because I also feel like it's not fair. No.
Chris,
So they-
I appreciate.
Yeah.
Krista?
So some board members are like, you guys are at different hours because some folks missed the use of force training. And so if you want to know where you are specifically, I can send that to you at the end of the day.
That would be helpful if you wouldn't mind sending that out.
Yeah, and I can send it out to each board member. However, some folks are missing quite a bit hours because they've missed a couple of trainings. And so that brings me to my next reminder, ride-alongs. Ride-alongs is a really good way for you guys to make up missing training hours. You can basically schedule your ride-along. The police are pretty flexible. And so you can schedule a time that works best for your calendars. So we're super flexible. Please check out that email that I sent you guys last month, and let me know if you would like to go on ride-alongs. I think a few of you have indicated that you want to go on ride-alongs, but I haven't received any waiver forms. Captain Faulkner, have you?
I did actually today, so.
Okay.
Bill and I spoke just via email earlier today. I think you're okay. I'll just give you a quick, for everybody on the board. So it couldn't really be easier. Once you complete that paperwork, you'll forward it to me and CCK one obviously would be beneficial. And then I send it off to the professional development unit. They process it, make sure everything's okay. It will be. It's just kind of procedural stuff there. But then it really comes down to what your availability is. We will send you out whenever you want to go out. Ideally, you would go out for a couple hours. I think in a 1 hour time is probably a waste of your time, right? Not to say you need to go work an 11-hour shift. That's probably too big of an ask, but probably 3 or 4 hours would give you a flavor of what's going on. And you can do it multiple times, but it really is whatever your schedule for 365, 24/7. So it's whatever you're looking to do. You probably want to avoid, early mornings, Saturday, Sunday, daytime. You want to be evening shift, nighttime shift. It doesn't have to be a Friday. That's a big misnomer. We're just as busy on. We had somebody shot this afternoon at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Right? So we're just as busy on a Tuesday as we could be on a Saturday. So, but again, whatever works for you all, just shoot me the email and we'll get you taken care of.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions about trainings or ride-alongs? Do you do more than one person for a ride-along, or is it usually done by individuals, one person at a time?
So, right, so the way that we set up is you ride in the right front seat with the officer you're assigned to.
Okay.
We could send multiple people out at the same time, but you can go with different officers.
Yeah,
Ideally in different parts of the county.
nice. What's the age requirement?
I say it has to be 18. If you're under 18, you have to be a minimum of 16. We can have a waiver sign if you're between 16 and 17, but everybody here obviously is over 18.
No, but I have a son that I'm wondering.
Okay. Yeah, so we can talk offline on that.
Personal business. All right, anything else that you want to bring up? Our beloved King?
Nothing from me. I was hoping that Colleen would be
Mhm.
here to talk a little bit more about Tanya's concerns as well as as well as the committee meetings. Colleen, the board's attorney, let us know, a couple weeks ago at this
Mhm.
point, that committee meetings do need to be public. Prior to the meeting with Colleen, we were under the impression that committee meetings were, they could be private meetings because the committee was under a quorum number of board members. And Colleen, who's our new attorney, looked into it and came up with a different answer. So I just want to flag for everyone that, especially members of the public here, our committee meetings will be made available to the public. They are posted on our website, just like our usual meetings. You'll be able to register for the Microsoft Teams link. There will also be an in-person location. So we do have a community outreach committee meeting scheduled for tomorrow at 6 p.m. At the Government Center, or you can join us virtually via Microsoft Teams.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to reports of committees. Research committee, would you like to go first?
We'll do Kevin.
What can?
The ride-along email.
Oh, okay, sorry,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, happy to. So the research committee has been working on looking into the use of force involving moving vehicles. We were hoping to meet and discuss the work that's been being done, the research, and also had invited a outside speaker to join us, who's has experience being a law enforcement officer in Delaware, as well as does research at the PhD in this area, but hopefully we'll be able to reschedule that. Our group's also been working on the feedback form and trying to revise what was update that we received from legal counsel last month, but again, didn't get the opportunity to discuss it and aren't even sure if we're allowed to work through shared documents. I had included in an email earlier, I think like last week, just asking if when we were proceeding meets, how the rules of the road, and received no input. So I'm not sure, like right now we're on pause, and that's very troubling to me. That's where we're at.
Two things I wanted to say is, one, I've heard incredible positive feedback from the work that you all have been doing, so thank you. And two, would that speaker be somebody that might be interested in coming to a board meeting?
Yes, I think that would be a great opportunity to have them
Okay,
and speak to the entire board and my community members.
yeah, all right, I think that would be something to consider scheduling. That could be really helpful.
Thank
you. Thank you. Outreach committee? Hey, Sean, are you? There you are.
Yes, so like Helen mentioned, we have our planning meeting tomorrow. Throughout this meeting, we will discuss a time frame as well as locations for a public forums that we plan to host early next year. I imagine we will have a series of these public forums to be able to gather as much information from the public as possible. We're hoping to have that first public forum meeting either in January or maybe a few of them in February to be able to gather information. And then I would imagine by February or March, we'll be full of drafting for that report. And so we're going to go over some logistics tomorrow as far as where we plan to host this. And then the following meetings, we will begin to plan what that discussion will look like, how we plan to host it. And so we're looking forward to next year really kicking this off. And so like Kelly mentioned, this will be open to the public, and so all are welcome to also share the input as far as maybe locations in the Newcastle County area that they feel best to have these discussions, but we are open to have those conversations. And so that's what we're working on for tomorrow.
Fantastic, thank you. Anyone have any questions? Awesome, thank you very much. And then Krista, do you have anything from the Education Training Committee?
We don't, we
Okay.
have not,
No, go ahead. This is something else.
we have not been meeting.
Okay,
And the focus has been getting on the official training done, so.
perfect. Very fair. Thank you. Have to ask. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I do have one question.
Yes.
I meant to ask this in my staff report, but I just wanted to get a sense of which board members still need to create their county email address. If you can please raise your hand or put it in the chat, if you still need to create your county email address. All right, got one. Anyone else here? Ooh, got two. Uh-oh. Anyone else? No judgment. This is a judgment-free zone. Judgment-free zone, sorry. Okay, that's a good thing. All righty, well, if you guys can just get that set up as soon, uh-oh, I got a third, all right. So yeah, if you guys can just get that set up as soon as possible, because I do want to switch from your personal emails to everyone's county email address. So thank you, guys.
Do you know if those can be checked on phones? Is there a limitation on how or where that is checked?
I don't think so. We can double check with colleagues.
Can they be checked
No.
on phones?
Yeah, I don't think there's a limitation as long as you load Microsoft on your phone itself.
I don't have Microsoft. That's the thing, is actually, but I can probably do it on my through a website. I'll figure it out. Good. Anything else, Krista? Anybody have any questions for Krista? Don't put her on the spot. Okay, perfect. Did I see your hand?
I had a quick question following up on the county email address.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Is the standard format first name dot last name at?
Newcastle D County.
Yeah,
something.
NewcastleDE.gov.
Okay, all right, so first name dot last name at Newcastle.
DE.gov.
DE.gov, okay,
Mhm.
I just wanted to put it out there so that the public does have those. So
Yeah.
that when we get legal counsel to clarify if they're allowed to contact us, they have them.
Make sure you know how to spell last names. Doug, did you have your hand raised for a question, or is that in reference to prior question?
You're on mute, Doug, if you're speaking.
He's telling y'all I don't have an email address.
I think that's still left
Yeah.
over from that. Well, if you need to come off mute, there he is. Yeah, Doug.
No, I wasn't really speaking. I was just did raise my hand about setting up the email. But other than that, I'm all right right now.
Okay, good. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure. All right, well, we are going to divert from the agenda. What I'd like to do is move to public comment as we're waiting for Colleen to come. So hopefully she will. We do have a few members of the community here. I don't know, did anybody sign in to say they wanted to ask or have?
I signed in, but
Perfect.
I don't have a comment.
Okay.
Put you on the spot. We have a couple of you. Do you have any you would like to say?
I'll be offline.
Okay, you sure? Okay. Lynn, I see board member. Do you have any public comment or questions of the board or anything you'd like to say? I can give you a whole 3 minutes, maybe 4.
Lynn, you can come off mute if you want.
You don't have to.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
okay, so now we're in that awkward position. Do we want to end the board meeting or do we want to wait a few more moments to see if our beloved attorney
I
joins?
emailed her.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So.
Oh, I do have an idea.
Yeah.
No, you ask your question first.
Like, if we can just do some free dialogue, since I heard that the community engagement committee is having an event tomorrow, does that mean that we are authorized to continue meeting?
So not necessarily. That meeting was scheduled before I found out the news, and I know the public forums are required by the law. And so I couldn't cancel all of your planning meetings
Yeah.
for the forum because I feel like we'll be pushing the forum back, further along. So that meeting. I am willing to take some heat from the county because I scheduled it and it was posted in accordance to public meeting laws. So I made sure to post the agenda 7 days in advance. The reason why I had to cancel the research committee meeting is because we found that news out from Colleen within the 7-day period. So we couldn't even hold the meeting because we'll be in violation of public meeting laws. I was able to post an agenda last week for this meeting. So that's why we're able to have it. But hopefully I will get an answer from Colleen, a final answer. It sounds like a lot of these questions are for Colleen.
I know.
So like in her absence and for the sake of our time, right? In the next 10 minutes, can we deliver the questions that we ultimately want answered with the understanding that Colleen is not here and cannot answer them, but then that walks away with those questions having been captured. You record, that's right.
Yeah, it's recorded. Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that Al is recording, capturing those questions so that like you could backtrack with Colleen if she really can't get to us tonight.
Yes, and so I'm gonna ask the board, because I also had the thought that if we wanted to use some time, we could start talking about the annual report. So we can use our time, we can gather some questions, and I'm also wondering if you all would like to carve out some time to also have that conversation. So I'm gonna bring it to a good old-fashioned vote. Do you all want to spend 10, 15 minutes on Colleen, questions? I don't think his hand ever went down. Okay. And then do you want to talk with the annual report? I'm gonna leave it there, and if anybody wants to challenge the time or not, do that, but does anyone want to second that as a motion?
Second.
All right, is there no, you moved it. I'm already, Kevin, I've already lost it.
Yes, you have. Don't worry. The motion has been made and seconded, so you can move forward with the vote.
Okay, so we're gonna move forward with the vote. If you all are willing to stay for 30 minutes, spend 15 minutes on Colleen questions, 15 minutes on starting to have a conversation about the annual report, please raise your hand so we can see it.
Doug and Deshawn, can you guys raise your hand?
Only if you vote yes.
Yes, only if you vote yes, sorry.
We're not trying to bully. So 1, 2, 3, everyone except, okay, so all but one, right? Yes, is your hand raised? Okay, so the vote passes. All right, we have some questions I know that Caitlin had come up with. So we can start there and see if they are similar. Do you have those?
I'm sorry, which question?
The ones that are putting you on the spot, the ones that are in the Microsoft Word document.
Questions for Colleen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that fair to share those?
I think we froze.
Did they freeze in the room? Yeah, they froze.
So.
We're
They
fine. We're
froze.
fine.
We're good.
Yeah, we're good. I guess that means I guess
they're
that means
back.
the technology voted against the vote.
There you go.
Okay, it may
Sorry.
take a little bit for me to pull this up, guys, because I have to like sign in and
Oh,
stuff.
well then don't worry. We'll
Okay. I remember them.
yeah, we'll come back around to it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put you on spot, Krista. What questions do you have? And I'll give everyone one question, then we'll come back around. How can we be, or are we prohibited?
Al.
Okay. Are you ready? No,
No,
I'm gonna write
I'm
this
sorry.
down. How can we be prohibited?
Not how, I need to see the provision that explicitly states.
We're gonna focus
I
just on
can't-
questions for the moment. I'm gonna focus just on
Yeah.
questions. From the public, and I'm guessing you mean, when you say we, how can a board member be prohibited?
Question, like, no, logically, if I'm in Target, someone knows I'm a board member.
Okay, how can a board member?
Right, like.
I think you should encourage them to
Okay.
complete the feedback form.
We're only asking questions.
sorry.
Yeah, Tanya, do you have a question for Colleen?
Done?
No.
Totally?
It's
Nope.
not yet,
Nope.
but we also have and so
Tanya, I'm gonna
because
come back to you, because I
sorry.
know you need to think it over.
I was
Okay.
just gonna say, so because the feedback form isn't created,
Set my
we
time.
created a general board email address. And that's what we're encouraging people to email if they have feedback, especially about Newcastle County PD. It keeps it all in a centralized location, as well as it allows Colleen to take a look at it and review it for anything that she may have to redact.
Can I ask another question? I know.
Hold
It
on
may
to
be a
it. We're
Colleen question.
We're gonna, guys, I'm gonna give everyone one question.
It's a
Okay,
money
okay.
In the board, can you, because you do all the things, get us business cards? So that if we are running into people in the public, it's something that we can hand over, it can have our names on it. do we have official business cards?
That's a question for the board. You guys get to vote on how you spend your budget. So you can propose it to the board at a future meeting, and if they think it's a good idea, then we
Okay.
can go ahead and do that. I don't see any
Okay, so
issues.
that's not a comment
Yeah.
question. Okay. You ready for a question or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this a one-time conflict or will this be an ongoing conflict between her other board meeting and this board meeting?
Noted. On this. Kevin, do you have a question? I have to remember who's on the screen.
No.
For Colleen? I'm sorry.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Pamela, do you have a question for our lawyer?
Not a question, but sort of just to echo the sentiments of what Tanya and Krista have been inquiring about, which is why myself and Krista have not met as a part of the training subcommittee, because we've been awaiting next steps. So I'm anxious as well as to what next steps will be regarding that. So not a question, but just a comment. Thanks.
Sounds good. So committee meetings, getting clarification. Deshaun?
No, none that hasn't been asked already.
Y'all are in luck. We're gonna have to table our conversation about the annual report. Colleen has entered the room. So Doug, I'm not gonna leave you out though. If you had a question you want me to write down, I'm happy to do so.
Colleen, feel free to have a seat at the table if you like. There's plenty of space.
Everyone meet Colleen in person. Thank you so much.
Oh, right.
We were coming up with some questions that we were going to ask of you. So take a moment.
Yes, I'm sorry that I'm
Get
late.
settled.
I had another hearing over at the government center that just concluded, so it took me a minute to get in my car and hobble over.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it.
Laptop's dying.
Yeah, I just plugged it in, so I think it's charging now.
Oh, that's good. All righty. So Colleen is here. She is the attorney for the Newcastle County Police Accountability Board. And do you want to share, like, do you have prepared things that you want to inform, or do you want to hear the questions that the board has for you?
I do not have anything prepared to share. So I'm happy to try to answer questions. If it's something that I don't have the answer to, I'll be happy to get it for the next meeting.
Wonderful. There are a couple of different areas which the board is confused and looking for your insight on. And so I'm going to start with the first topic, which there seems to be some confusion on whether or not and how board members can communicate with public. So have concerns of either having someone from the public reach out via email, run into them on the street, be in another meeting that's work related, not Police Accountability Board, and what are the parameters in which a board member can interact with that person in regards to Police Accountability Board work.
Sure, that's a common question that all the boards that I've ever been involved with all have concerns and questions about. And because this is a government related public board, the rules are fairly restrictive. And that's based on FOIA. You can't, it's Delaware, so everybody knows everybody, everybody's connected to everybody, there's not even 2 degrees of separation, right? So you can't help but run into people who are gonna know you're on a board and they're gonna ask you questions. So let's talk about in-person sort of, meets first, and then we'll talk about correspondence second. You cannot discuss or talk on behalf of the board to the public by yourself, okay? So if somebody runs into you and they say, hey, I have this question, I have this problem, I want the board to help me, you can't discuss the board business. You can't offer advice as a board member on behalf of the board, because that only can be done when the board is together, okay? However, you know, usually what I tell people is to just, you know, you don't have to be dismissive. You can certainly, you know, let them say what they need to say, and then, you know, you have to say to them, you know, what you said is, you know, very interesting or compelling. I suggest that you come to a meeting where you present that to the whole board, because I by myself can't really do anything, you know, to act on that. It has to go before the entire board. So something along those lines is what I would, you know, suggest that the board would do. The other thing that'll happen is maybe there's a couple board members and you're at some conference or you're at some meeting or something, and again, someone approaches you. You have to be very wary of giving, you know, responses and discussing and engaging in anything as a board member on behalf of the board. Because if you think of it this way, it's not exactly the same analogy, but it's a more common one that people can understand. Just like if you're on a jury, right? Everybody's watched, even if you've not been on a jury, if you've watched TV or movies, you know that the jury can only really act together as a full jury. You can't go off on your own as a jury member and sort of, you know, conduct an investigation or seek information or discuss with the witnesses. You have to do that as a full group. There are some exceptions, so it's not a perfect analogy, but just know that it's better to not really weigh in with people on board business. General questions, you know, if they want to know, well, what is the board? How does it work? When does it meet? Of course, all of that is perfectly fine for you to answer. It's just really more if they want to get into the business of the board, things that the board is deciding, agendas, you know, maybe a report that the board is preparing, or a complaint or a concern or something like that. Those are really the things that you have to worry about. General questions, just, you know, who's on the board, where does it meet, how does it work, that kind of stuff, that's perfectly fine. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful. And if you ever get in a situation as a board member where you don't know, it is perfectly appropriate for you to email me as your attorney to ask. Okay, so you should all have my email, and you can certainly just, you know, reach out to me maybe in the subject matter, you know, question about you know, public discussion or public meeting or something like that. And I can communicate directly with you as your attorney to answer those questions. It's hard for me to address every scenario you might ever come in contact with. So I'm trying to give you kind of general idea, but if you ever have, you know, a specific instance where you really want a little better clarification, just reach out to me. I'm available. And all the rules about communication individually, they don't apply if you're talking to me to ask for legal advice as your attorney. So you can reach out just to me to ask me. Anybody?
Yeah, I know Krista had posed this question before you were here, so I'll let her go, and then Tanya, I'll let you follow up after her. And then online, if you have questions, please put it in the chat or raise your hand.
Hey, Sean, I'm not trying to jump in front of you or speak for you, but as a member of the community outreach committee, how are we community outreaching when we can't talk to the community?
That is the committees are something that we need to discuss further. I think there was a little bit of confusion in the beginning when they were formed. Yes.
Specifically, we're supposed to be holding town halls. We're
Correct.
supposed to be talking to the community.
Yep, I understand all of
Can't
that.
talk to the.
I'm not saying you can't talk to the community, and I'm not saying that as a committee, you can't talk to the community, but there are rules with regard to FOIA that will apply to those meetings. So when you are meeting as a committee, it's no different than if you're meeting as a whole group. So the rules that would apply to the whole group would apply to you as committee members, as a subset of that committee. So we have to do some work on that, because I understand from the meeting that I had with Kim and Kaylin that there might have been some confusion about that initially when they were set up. But you absolutely can talk to the community in your outreach, but meetings, but there are the same rules that would apply to, say, this meeting that are gonna apply to those committee meetings. So members of the community come in and you're officially meeting as a group, as a body, and then you're gonna be discussing with the community.
And so they have to be public.
Yeah. And
Okay.
those are some of the things that we need to work on.
So that is one thing we'll have to
That
change.
is not, I don't.
So-
One moment, please. One moment, please. Go ahead, Krista.
Sorry.
Basically, our subcommittee meetings have to be treated the way these are, publicly advertised, agenda, public can sit on it, fine. When we have town halls and we're trying to communicate with the public to better understand their experiences, that means we need to be basically here, or somewhere like that here, with the owl set up and a public link available.
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
Tanya had her hand up, and then Deshawn, you'll go after Tanya. And then anybody else, raise your hand. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Tanya.
So I understand what you said so far as quorum and board business. My question is, can you provide clarification on what constitutes board business versus just having a conversation about policing or a police matter or something police adjacent within Newcastle County, right? So for instance, member of the public reaches out and asks about, what's going into the report. I can definitely feel comfortable saying that's board business, please come to the board meeting, check the reports, blah, blah, blah. But if someone's like, hey, I've noticed that this is, happening in my neighborhood, and just like wants to have a conversation, that, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily constitute board business until I've actually brought it and introduced it as new business. Is that correct? Because otherwise, wouldn't everything the police are doing be board business because it's related to the board?
So
Which I think is ridiculous.
I think, think of it this way, okay? What hat are you wearing when you're having that discussion? Are you wearing your hat that, I don't know where you live, but let's say you live on, Elm Street, right? And you're walking your dog and your neighbor on Elm Street says, hey, how are you? Like, I was wondering, are you having that conversation as a board member? Are you having a conversation as a neighbor? Are you speaking for the board, or are you just speaking for you, neighbor who lives on Elm Street? That's the way I try to explain it. And again, I can't account for every scenario, which is why I'm saying, if you ever have,
But
you
that
can
doesn't make sense.
Chris.
if you ever have a doubt, feel free to reach out to me, okay? But if you're being asked by your neighbor to discuss something that is a board business, then more than likely it's gonna be something that you should refer them to come to the meeting. If they just want to chat with you about something that's going on in the neighborhood that's a concern, and they're talking to you as a neighbor, as a friend, that's fine. That's fine. But because that you're speaking for you, not for the board.
Right, so I never speak for the board unless I am presently at a board meeting. Otherwise, I'm always like, I'm on the board, but my mouth is my mouth. And so I think all of us wear multiple hats, so.
Absolutely. And you live in Delaware, which I always tell, it's like, everybody knows everybody. So
Right,
it's impossible. And no one is saying that you need to live sort of, in this cone of silence. I'm not saying that because that's not realistic. But what I'm saying is be mindful when you have these conversations, because people will know that you're on the board and they will want to talk to you. That's natural, right? So just be mindful. Are they talking to you because you are the neighbor who lives on Elm Street? Or are they talking to you because you're on the board and they want to talk about something to do with the board? If you get that feeling that it's not just you, neighbor, friend, acquaintance, but it's you board member, then it probably is better discussed as a board member. It's gonna have to be your decision and your call, you know what I mean? And more than likely, it's not gonna be challenged, but if it were to be challenged, those are the kinds of questions and issues that we would have to discuss and argue. So I always tell people, be mindful of that, because that's probably gonna be your best guide. And if you can say, no, like I was walking my dog and I ran into my neighbor and we were talking about this and I was talking to her as a neighbor and a friend, not as a, then that's probably gonna be fine. And that's, when you get into the little details of it, that's for me to worry about, not you. As long as you could tell me, if we had to talk about it, that that's what you were doing, then that's perfectly fine. Does that make sense? And again, it's not, I can't give you like, this happens to this, if somebody says
Yeah.
this, because I can never get you all the scenarios.
Right.
So I'm trying to give you kind of global guidance, you know, and if you feel comfortable that you're just chatting as yourself with a neighbor, as a friend about general things, you know, or about general, you know, welfare issues of your community, then you're fine. You're perfectly fine. Okay?
We have a question online, Deshawn, and then we'll come to you. But we do have other questions, so I want to be careful belaboring one if we can.
Sure.
There is a couple of different things. So
Okay.
Deshawn, I think you had your hand raised.
Yeah, actually, Norwood had his hand first. I can ask my question after him. I want to be respectful of that. I know Norwood.
Oh,
Okay.
joined us.
I imagine on Dejan that we were really going to ask the same question. But my question was really this. Number one, first of all, thank you for that explanation. And I guess a clarification of a role. Because it seems that the role that we understood is quite different than what you just explained.
Okay.
Do you have a question or?
The question is this. Really simply, what is there a consequence if we were to misstep? And what would that be?
That's an excellent question. The consequence would be, and actually I sort of alluded to it when I answered your question, which is, probably nothing is gonna happen. However, if someone were to complain, to overhear your discussion, let's say, you know, so you're chatting with your neighbor and some, you know, busybody overhears and says, hey, you know, isn't Mr. Coleman on the board? You know, what's he doing talking about board business, right? And so what would happen procedurally is they would make a complaint to the Department of Justice for a FOIA violation, Freedom of Information Act, and they would say that you are, you know, discussing board business when you're not, you know, in a meeting, right? Maybe that's true, maybe that's not true, maybe we prevail and nothing happens, or maybe not. But what will happen is that we'll have to answer, I'll have to investigate, I'll have to write about it, we'll have to argue why it's not, why you're perfectly within your right to have a chat with your neighbor. You know, or at your church or something, you know, that's not a violation. So if there were to be found a violation, it's a public decision that's made. And sometimes there can be for certain groups monetary consequences, not personal, but you know, like to the county, I guess, basically. So, you know, it will make a lot of work, mostly for me, but it will make a lot of work if somebody were to allege.
No,
And people do it by accident all the time, so it's not like it doesn't happen. My job, though, as your lawyer, is to just try to cut down on problems, right, before they happen. So,
Deshawn, you had a question next?
Yeah, and thank you, Colin, for explaining this. I understand that when we're operating in our board capacity, that we must be aware of what hat we're wearing during these conversations. And I imagine for these public forums that it's going to be focused on gathering information. I don't see us making any promises or anything like that of that nature, but I imagine that it would be nice to be able to have you in some of those public forum sessions so that we are able to kind of have that guidance, provide clarity around some areas that we may not be experts on. But I also want to raise another question is as far as the board's transparency and how we're communicating internally so that we're all aligned. I know that was another question that we had. I know that there's conversations going on in the board that, you know, sometimes I won't find out those conversations until maybe we're present at the board meeting. And so my question is, how are we able to communicate amongst the board? And if we are communicating, does that each communication have to be public? I think I would like to have a better understanding of that so that we are able to stay aligned going into this new year, especially since we have this report that is due in April. I imagine that we will be moving quick with these public forums. And so we will need to have all hands on deck when it comes to drafting up the report, and we need to be able to communicate effectively.
Absolutely. Excellent question, and an important one. Okay, so a couple of things. When we talk about something being public, right, communication, what that means is that any citizen could make a FOIA request of the county for documents, information relating to the board and the board's business. And everything, with a few exceptions, you know, that the board is communicating via email is gonna potentially be FOIAble, okay, or, you know, have to be turned over. So, you know, when you get into sticky situations and when there are violations that occur, it's when, you know, 2 or 3 board members are exchanging emails about board business. And if that were to be ruled to be a meeting, it's not a full meeting. And then you get into, you know, a couple different problems. You have the fact that there's communication going on that's not to all the board members. So like that jury that's deliberating, and I don't want to talk about committees, because I know you have committees, so I'm not talking about that. But you know, then the fact that you're having, if it's ruled to be a meeting that's not compliant with FOIA, then that's another problem. So the solution that I tell people, and again, we have to have a separate conversation about committees because that is a different situation. I will say, generally, you treat the committee and the committee members just like you would, and the rules just like you would for the whole board, you're probably fine, okay? And if we need to get into the more details, we can later. But, you know, 3 board members should not be generally having communication, whether it's email or verbal, about board business, okay? So if you want to communicate something, even if it is only to a few board members is all that you're really worried about, if you send it to everybody, you have to, you know, then you're more covered. But, you know, you do still need to be mindful of the fact that I'm, as your attorney, I'm not a big fan of, you know, communication flying back and forth with the board members. I mean, you receive information and emails from Kaylin as the coordinator. You might get something from Kim. Again, if it's about, you know, can you give me a ride to the meeting? Can you do, you know, none of that matters. We're not talking about any of that, but we're talking about substantive emails, you know, discussing elements of board business.
Would those have to get put part of the minutes if there was
They're
board
not.
business done over email, so it's public?
No, they're not going to be part of the minutes because minutes are about the meeting, but they are, if anyone were to make an inquiry, they are going to have to be turned over. Also, just as someone who's worked in government my whole career, I'll tell you that people forget that when they send emails. And you might say something in an email to your friend that you've known for a long time who's also on the board. You might make some comment that if it ends up being shared with the world, you'd prefer it not be. So I would just be careful with emails that are, and again, if you all know each other outside of this board and, you go to the same church, you're in the same groups, live near each other, whatever. Not talking about that. That's totally separate. Talking about board business or something that potentially could be board business, related to board business. If you're ever in doubt, but you feel like you need to send an email, again, copy me on it. Ask me about it. And then, we can go from there. But if you, if you feel like you could wait till the meeting to talk about it, if you feel like you could talk with everyone about it, that's probably better. If you have a question about it and you want to send it, you can reach out to me and ask me if you have a doubt about it. But you should know that if you send it, it's not that it has to be published, but it is public, meaning anyone who requests, a certain category of emails or information from the board, it would all have to be turned over. So, also, if you're using your personal email accounts, much like they tell us, don't send text with your personal phone because that makes it searchable. Just remember that too. Just easier to probably not send a lot of emails, but sometimes you have to.
All right, I know there's lots of hands. Krista, you had your hand.
I already said mine.
All right, Nord and then Tanya. Nord?
You're on mute, Norwood.
Sorry, can you hear me? So thank you for all of that clarification. What I'm sensing is that we're really building structure around this process, and I really appreciate you helping us to develop that structure. That being said, structure is often limiting.
It is. That's
And
government.
well, I worked in government for years, so I understand what it means. So number one, all the things that you talked about, could you put that in writing and send that to each and every one of us on the board so we can have at least a sort of a guideline, communication, at least with communication. That's really important for us. We have a variety of levels of understanding that would be very important to me. And so I would request that as number one. Number two, I personally am feeling a little bit, it's not really a little bit, I'm feeling really unsettled. And that this is our conversation is that, I feel like the understanding of the purpose of this board and how you are presenting your role is, we're talking about two different things. My understanding of the role is, as the mental health person is that our goal is to support the community, create access, conversation, and build bridges. What I've heard is how we protect ourselves in doing that. I understand that we have a legal liability. What we say is important, but I've not heard anything from you as our legal advocate that guides us in how we actually connect with the community in language. I've only heard how we disconnect or find ourselves protecting the government. And that's what I signed up for. So can you help me to understand how
Well,
how we can utilize language and our role to connect with the community? Otherwise, this conversation is really not really important to me.
well, as the attorney for the board, I do work for Newcastle County, and I'm doing my job to try to guide the board to keep, any legal problems to a minimum. I'm not, though, a member of the board, so I don't really have a say in how, you as a board choose to, conduct your board, duties. It's not to me to tell you this is what you should do. Now, also, this is my second meeting, and I, literally came running over from another hearing that I was in. So I think your question, I would love to get into that question with, and try to be helpful. But it's not something that I can sit here tonight, right now, and say, well, these are all the things, that the board should do. Or not do. I was asked to respond to specific questions, so I'm trying to do that. And I would love, to have more discussion about, what the board does, what the board wants to do. And I'm, but to ask me sort of a blanket, you're not being responsive, how are we supposed to do this? I'm not sure that, I'm gonna be able to give you a specific answer, until we've had, more of a chance to talk about what you do, what you wanna do. What do you have concerns about? What is it that what is it that you wanna do that you think I'm saying you can't do, or that there might be a problem doing? I'm gonna try to help you and advise, but that is what I'm supposed to be doing. So, I would welcome, and I'm sure we will have more chance to, discuss what you do. But right now, I was just being asked specific questions about communication between board members and what that means and what shouldn't happen. So, let's have that discussion that you want to, Mr. Coleman, but I'm gonna need a little more than just that. I hear what you're saying, and I'm, not trying to not be responsive, but I think I'm gonna need, we're gonna need to have a little more of a discussion about maybe giving me some specific examples where you feel sort of hamstrung or something, and maybe I can help with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, and I am a little worried about timing. Hold on, please. So one of the things that I want to make sure, what I am hearing is that it's not that we can't, is that it has to be public. And so anything that is board of business just has to be done in a public way. And we as a board will have to just make sure we're managing that well and making as many opportunities and continue conversations to understand what we can, to understand what is considered board business or not. It is of my opinion that this may not be the best forum to get into every detail, and noting it is already 7:15, and it is really important that we understand what we can do for committees, because currently that's where some of that work is being done. So I do not want to silence anybody, but I am sensing some frustration, and I am worried that that's going to cycle into a place of getting caught and not getting some more information. So I do not want to stifle you, but I do want to warn of timing and really make sure that we focus on getting as much information. And then, as Colleen said, having more conversations, and potentially we have to have more board meetings that are public to keep hashing this out so that we all feel comfortable and understand, and then challenge as need be. But
And
I do think we need to make sure that we do understand, and I know that I personally really want to understand the committees as well.
And Mr. Coleman, I absolutely plan to put together a couple memos. One of them will be specifically addressing FOIA concerns, and that should hopefully give you a starting place, to read it, digest it, and then, we can continue discussing it. I have not had an opportunity to do that yet. So I understand that the board needs it and wants it, and you will have it.
Thank you, Colleen. Would you mind sharing what you can about committees? And then once we can get committees out, we'll spend what time we have left to continue to hash out what you all need to hash out, to leave here feeling as comfortable as possible, and we can stay as long as the library allows us and you as a board want to stay. So can you talk to us about committee meetings?
Okay. Is there something specific?
Yes, so
Okay.
we want to make sure we can have committees and under what situations, the frequency. You gave a look, was it not asking the question well?
No,
Okay,
yes.
and I think one of the concerns we had is, do we have to wait to find out whether they were paid or not for us to be able to have committees? So can we have committee meetings if they're public? Do we need to wait for anything from the council to know if we have to go through some sort of payment process to have the committee meetings?
Okay. So the question relating to money, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
But as far as having committees, you can definitely have committees. There is no reason why you can't. I would only suggest to the board that you be thoughtful about how many committees and how frequently they meet, because it can become quickly burdensome on a board like this. Because, you have other jobs and responsibilities, and it, can be between the full board meetings and committee meetings, it can get to be a lot. But you may absolutely have committees. Committees serve great use on boards all the time. And the rule is really simple. The same rules that apply to the meeting of the entire board apply to the meeting of a committee. So if the whole board is 9 members and a quorum then is 5, if a committee is made up of 3 members, then a quorum is 2. They have to be publicly noticed, just like your meetings do. And the public, has to have the ability to attend if they want. You can't do it, in your basement over a cup of coffee, as much as that is probably more productive and would make you more happy to be able to do it that way. And I understand that. A committee meeting has to happen publicly, just like the meeting of this board. And that I realize that that information is not consistent with what you originally were told, and I apologize on behalf of the department for that. I will tell you that I have represented a lot of boards in the 8 years I've worked at the county, probably more than anybody else. When I mentioned this to my boss, we had a discussion. I showed him the case law. We had a, further discussion, and I think you met Mr. Davis. He is in agreement that I am correct. So you don't have to change meeting in committees. You just have to know that those things have to happen. And to just think about, I'm still getting the lay of the land with everything in this committee. I mean, in this board, I'm not even 100% sure that I'm aware of all the committees and what they do and how often they're meeting and who's on them. I'm still getting all that information. So I'm just speaking generally that, I think if there are certain projects, community outreach, those are important. They serve great function. and help the board as a whole and they get business done. Research, I know you have a research committee, that's a helpful thing. Just, think about what you want the committees to do. In having them, creating them and staffing them, because you're already meeting a lot. So just, I think just
Thank
make
you.
sure everybody's on the same page about that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Hands about committees. Tanya, and then Norwood will come to you next.
I'm thinking within the committee context, can you please provide some guidance on how we can actually do our job? And I'm thinking from the research committee perspective in particular.
Okay.
There's, I'm getting the sense that we're going to be somehow trying to do all of the research committee's work within an hour and a half time period per month. If we're going to have to do them in a public forum, and there's no way to do any actual research conversation around research discussion so that we can provide criticism and constructive feedback. If we only have an hour and a half a month for the research committee to even have conversations, let alone Robert's rules and calling of order and public comments. And so how should we go about doing our job? Like, I'm really trying to stay, because I recognize you're coming in after almost a year of frustration.
Understand.
And a lot of this is not your fault, but you're getting the brunt of it. So
Oh, no.
I really do
And I get that.
apologize, but I feel as though it's absurd to think that we'll accomplish anything if we aren't allowed to have sidebar conversations with experts about things related to the board business, if we're not allowed to have small group discussions, if we're not allowed to receive email from the public. Like, I just feel like we're being told all the things that we cannot do, that I'm questioning if the county actually wants us to do anything.
So first of all, the law that is giving all these restrictions is a state law, which mirrors the federal law. So it actually, the county doesn't even have a FOIA law. We're just required to follow what the state and federal law are. So that, it's not the county. It has nothing to do with the county. In fact, all it does is create a whole lot of work for the county, because we always get FOIA requests daily, hundreds of them that we have to fill. So I feel your pain and I totally understand it, but it isn't coming from any rule that the county is setting. So know that. I mean, that doesn't help you, but maybe it just makes you feel a little better. It's not coming from the county.
Right,
okay?
I didn't mean
Yeah.
that the law was coming from the county,
Yeah.
because I understand that
But-
FOIA goes beyond
Yeah.
that, but I feel as though we're being asked to do something. I'm looking at the ordinance, we're being asked to do something, but being told to do it
Yeah, okay, so
in inoperable circumstances.
as far as the research committee, okay? You, and it might be easier to give you a better, I'm gonna give you an answer, but it might be easier to give you a better answer if I come to a meeting and I'm able to, observe and see what's happening. So that's a caveat for my answer. But the meeting is to discuss what you've come up with. So you're gonna be doing, I'm assuming that, if you're gonna call somebody to get information, an expert, that was an example you used, okay? You can talk to that expert and gather information from that expert. And then you're gonna share it with your committee members at a meeting. Another committee member could be online doing research about something, right? And creating information and getting stuff together and then present it and you discuss it at the meeting. The meeting is where you're gonna discuss sort of the fruits of your labor, if that makes sense. So I'm not saying that you can't do the work. I'm saying that when you discuss the work, it has to be as a group.
And I don't think
So-
at committees you have to follow very strict Robert rules
Yeah,
of
the
laws,
Robert's
like
rules-
that's different.
That's it. Robert's rules.
We're not even doing it right now. 'Cause
are-
I've declared open forum, right, to a degree.
Robert's rules are to make sure that everyone has a voice and that everything is orderly. I'm sure you can, and maybe you've attended meetings where things quickly can get out of control. So the Robert's rules should be followed to the extent they can be, but it becomes way less important if you're talking about, 4 of you, 3 of you, right? So, you can have free discussion. That you do have to have an agenda, so you do have to know what you're gonna talk about. You can't just get together and talk about whatever. Because the whole purpose of an agenda under FOIA is you have to let the public know what you're gonna be doing. So they know if they wanna attend or listen or whatever. So you gotta let them know, what we're gonna talk about, the research that you did online, we're gonna talk about discussion, in a report we're gonna get from an expert. Whatever it is, you gotta put that on your agenda, but the discussion of it and hashing things out, that's what you're gonna do at your meeting. That's where, that's where FOIA is gonna be more applicable. What you're doing, and maybe that's not a helpful answer, but again, because I haven't been to a meeting, that I'm trying to answer as sort of generally as I can. You're fine, but what we need to be careful about is how many people are on research? 1. Okay, so there's 5 of you on the committee. What we need to be careful about is if 3 of you are doing something off on the side that the other people in the committee don't know about. And you're not putting that in a public forum, you're not putting it on an agenda, and there's not a group discussion about it. That's where you potentially could get into a problem. But if you're simply gathering information or you're putting things together for presentation of the whole group, that's fine.
We do shared folders and working documents or no, because.
Sure.
Okay.
That's your work. That's your work product. Okay, again, more specific questions about that, why don't you email me and we can talk about it more specifically. Okay, yeah, so it's not, I know it's restricted. And believe me, please don't get the impression that I'm a fan of any of it. In fact, it's very difficult sometimes. It is a burden for, a lot of reasons, but it is the law and we don't have a choice but to follow it. So I'm just trying to guide us to, and I also know it's not at all helpful, the fact that I'm coming in after so much time and things are gonna have to change somewhat. I'm well aware of that. And I don't have, I can't do anything about it. So we're gonna do the best that we can. I think open dialogue and tell me, what about this? Why can't we do this? Should we do this? Just ask me and I'll tell you. We'll work through it and we'll get to a point where, you guys can have as much freedom as possible to do your job. I understand this is a unique board. With unique, tasks that you're supposed to be doing. So I get all that and I want to help you do that. And I think you can get to a point where you won't really even think about it anymore. It's just the way you'll conduct it. It won't be a problem. You'll feel like you have enough, freedom to do what you need to do.
Are there, if you have questions online, re-raise your hand. I think sometimes it goes stale if it's been up for a while. I know Doug and Norwood, at some point I saw your hand, so I was going to give you guys that chance. What other questions do you all have? What needs to be answered? One question I had was about, is there anything about executive session or executive committee? If Kaylin and I are with Kevin, or if we're coordinating meetings, what all of that needs to be also in a public forum? Are there any exceptions or not when it's the administrator or chair?
Okay, so you have 2 questions.
Yeah.
So I'll answer the second part first.
Okay.
If you as the chair, co-chair, and the administrator are discussing sort of, procedure or, administrative things, that's not a meeting and that's fine. You can continue to do that. Where are we gonna meet? What time is it? What do we have to do? Those are all perfectly fine. Once you get kind of beyond those, the answer is maybe yes, maybe no. We'll have to, if you have a specific concern, let me know. But I think most of what I've seen so far that's been communicated, that I've been included in, you're fine. Those are just general administrative tasks sort of things, and that's absolutely fine.
Okay, perfect.
As far as executive session goes, executive session can happen under some limited circumstances. In some committees, you never go into executive session. Executive session, for anybody who doesn't know, would be closed to the public. So, the camera usually stays on, but they, mute the sound. And the public, leaves the room that are here, in person. And then, the business is conducted under executive session. Some committees use it regularly, depending on the committee. I think in my discussions so far that probably some use of executive session in this board will end up being useful. I don't really want to get into too much in the terms of specifics tonight, and I will also put that in a memo. But it really is when there's confidentiality issues, which, as everybody knows, you're gonna have that in this board. That's obviously, sensitive material that you all deal with. So I think executive session is probably something that we'll work on, figuring out what is it that we need to do in executive session, what should be done. And then, we'll kind of go from there. So
Thank you.
it is something, if you, have heard of it or you think we might need it, you're right. We probably do. So we're gonna work on that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. What other questions do you all have, or comments or clarifications? Okay, this is not our last chance at all because she is around, but it's, Tanya.
Committee meetings going to be scheduled for January? Or are we still waiting to hear?
No, you said you knew about payment on that?
Yeah,
You wanna-
so I'm still waiting for a definite answer from the county. But in long story short, the finance department did not anticipate the board's committee meetings being paid meetings. So therefore, I doubt that they budgeted for committee meetings. However, you all do have, you all were given $40,000 from county council in September. Now, that money could be used for training and other assistance. My office believes that you all can use the money to pay for your committee meetings under that other assistance language. We just have to let finance know, say, hey, you have to take the money from this budget and not the general meeting budget that they laid out when you guys were created. So I'm just working through the fine details of that. But I also do plan on letting county council know that that is a challenge for us because I don't think they knew that our committee meetings would be paid when they initially gave us $40,000. So maybe they'll be willing to grant you all more funding to cover the committee meetings.
Okay, and then because of that reason, then do we need to submit something in writing noting the meeting attendance because it's out of a different fund? Do they need to track it differently?
I will ask, but I don't think
Okay.
so. I don't have to submit anything to them for these
Because
meetings.
we had a different budget. That's
Yeah,
why I
so
thought.
I'll
Okay.
ask so, but
Okay.
I don't think so.
So yes, you can meet.
Okay, so the research committee will be meeting the first Tuesday, and do I need to get you an agenda?
We need to
Like,
post
so
it
many
and
days
everything.
before?
Yeah, the agenda has
Location.
to be posted 7 days before the meeting. So if you can get it to me probably the prior day, that'll be great.
Great.
You said
Yeah,
7
8
days.
days. Yeah, sorry, the prior day when it's due. Yeah.
Oh,
So
when it's due. 8
yeah.
days ahead.
So
Caitlin,
your
so
meetings
they'll
are
be
on a
coming in.
Tuesday, so it'll be due the Monday, that day before the meeting.
You're talking just work days.
I'm sorry, what was
Are you
that?
talking just like Monday through Friday days?
What, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Business days or all 7 weekdays?
Yeah,
Or
business days. No, just the Monday before you guys meet. So you meet the second Tuesday of every month.
The first
So
Monday.
I need the,
the first Monday?
yes, the first Monday. So that Monday before it's due. Yes.
Okay.
That's when I need it.
Calendar, not business.
Yeah.
Okay.
So honestly, but sometimes your meetings may not even be on a Tuesday. What I'm saying is the day before is due. So let's say your meeting is on a Saturday, right? Just like that day before it's due, just get it to me. So 8 days.
Oh, we-
8.
Yeah.
We have standing time.
Yeah.
We always meet on Tuesday.
Perfect.
Yeah, but I'm saying you guys may need to schedule another meeting for, recommendations and things like that.
I mean, honestly, I don't know if we're going to be able to make recommendations if we're not allowed to meet. Like, you are allowed to.
Okay.
You are allowed to.
All right.
Yeah. So yes, you have permission to meet in January. It has to be public and accessible.
All right,
Okay.
and are we limited to how long we're allowed to meet for?
Not that I know of.
Colleen?
Is there? I don't know where the hour and a half came from that you were.
Well, just
I
because
don't-
we were scheduled for an hour and a half.
Yeah,
That's, and I know you're like
That's
watching
also
the clock
cute. I
and.
know.
That's up to the committee to determine. If you would like to limit it at an hour, you may do so. If you want to limit it at 5 hours, you may do so. You could do anything you want as a committee. That is perfectly, completely up to you to decide how you guys want to do that.
Okay, all right, you know.
Do minutes need to be submitted for committees?
I believe minutes should be kept, yeah.
Okay.
They don't have to. I mean, everything is being recorded, so I don't think, the minutes need to get into too crazy a detail, but
Yeah.
they should be kept, yeah.
Okay.
And they have to be posted as well. Like we post our minutes for the general meetings.
Yes, however you do it for the general meetings is how you should do it for the committee meetings, yeah.
So it is coming back to the emails, really important for those of you that haven't gotten your Newcastle County emails. We're gonna
Yeah.
no longer be able to get emails to your personal, probably coming soon, so. Other questions or comments or concerns? We'll get to the public in a second. Let me give it to the board
Good.
first. Board members?
Well, I'd like to hear from the public, please.
I'm sorry, Norwood?
I would like to hear from the public, please.
Yes, yeah, I will open up to you all have been patient listening to us. Are you all okay extending so I can open it up to the public? Any concerns from the board? Okay, yes, Chris. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
That's the idea of a member of the public coming to a board member and wanting to tell them a story. And what's being presented is that they can't ever talk to you like you're a member of the board. And that's not right. That's not the intention of this committee. This committee was assembled and members were chosen because of their specific areas of expertise and experience and so on, to be, in a sense, representatives of those subpopulations. And so it only makes sense that a member of the public who has got something to say, and if they are hesitant to come to a board meeting, should be able to approach someone that they know or that they feel like they can trust to, and say to them, hey, I've got a story for you regarding, something relating to policing. And for that board member to be able to say, lay it on me, tell me about it. Let me ask you about, get some clarification or whatever it is. That's not board business. That's somebody talking to a member of the board and bringing something to that board, bringing something to that individual. And that individual, of course, can say, well, I suggest that you bring this up to the board itself. And if that person says, well, I'm not comfortable coming, into a meeting like this or whatever, that board member can choose to use the story that they heard to initiate a conversation in the public board meeting about whatever that story was related to, and ask questions about policy and so on and so forth. So this is a way of getting information from the public to the board in a way that can support them in making recommendations, giving feedback to the police and so on. But I think it's really important that the board and the county allow them to go out of their way to be approachable. And whether it's by phone or email, people, the public needs to have a channel for expressing their concerns.
Thank you, Chris. In that specific example, Colleen, if a board member is approached by somebody who wants to share information and the board member brings that to the board, is there any violation there? Is that an option for board members to take information and let them know, I can't tell you what the board will do, I can't give you recommendations, but I can take that to the board? Is that permitted?
I prefer at this point to be able to give the board a comprehensive legal memo. I understand completely the desire to be able to do that. But my answer is gonna be what the law says you're allowed to do. I don't get to write it. I just have to tell you what it is. I want to be I want to give the board 100% of all possible things they can do and be only as, Debbie Downer as I have to be. So I want to be able to put this in a memo after I've been able to look and give you specific examples. I will say very generally, listening is fine to listen. Listening, emphasis on listening. That's fine. You can always be a good listener. It's really, the problems more come in when you as the board member are speaking.
Engagement.
Right, so, if somebody says, look, I know there's something, I know there's nothing you can do right now, but I just want to tell you this story because it's really, upsetting. And you just say, well, I can't offer to do anything, I can't tell you anything, but I can listen. That's gonna be okay. Generally, that's okay.
What about email? What if the communication was received via email, like the story?
That's more difficult, so
Okay.
let's save that for when I can,
Do the memo. Got it.
yeah.
Thank you.
And then my understanding is when we have the memo, we as a board will have the choice, and I'll present this as a voting choice to make it public or not. So by default, my understanding is the memos to the board, and then we choose from that whether we will, is that true, or is it automatically a public document?
No, memos from your attorney are not, they're actually confidential, unless the board chooses
Okay.
to make it. So the default is it's
That's what I
confidential
thought.
unless the
Yeah.
board votes on it.
So that's important to know, is that when we get memos from Colleen, they're not to be forwarded out. We as a board have to decide as a board if they are a public document. So keep that in mind.
And
And just
That's just general, like.
I was gonna say, it
legal
goes,
Stuff, that has
yeah.
nothing to do, that would be whether you were having a conversation with your private lawyer or whatever. It's presumed to be confidential attorney-client unless you waive that. So you as a board could choose to waive that, and certainly, I'm assuming, sometimes you will, and
Yeah.
it makes sense. But, the default is that it is not,
right, so I wanna make sure that you
Yeah.
all knew that.
like the memo you got from, Will Davis.
Yeah.
That's an example. Default.
You had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm understanding, you want to limit the FOIA information. If you're part of the board, you want to stay out of litigation. If you say something you shouldn't have, another lawyer's gonna have fun. But what I encourage, what it sounds like is this board is in an infancy. You know what I mean? You're probably well ahead of the city of Newark, Ellesmere, Middletown, and the rest of the state. You're here because the legislatures asked you to, have a community effort with, trying to solve a problem. I think your legislatures are your friends. You know what I mean? I think you gotta go back to your legislatures and say, here's what we can do, here's what we can't do. I'm gonna talk to the other boards too. You know what I mean? And let your legislators decide if you want to go talk to the city of Newark, you want to talk to the other boards to get your research done. So I think you have to go back and say, all right, everybody knows, there's the system is a little bit flawed right now. And I think these are the type of improvements you could probably want to make, you know what I mean? Because you want to be cohesive throughout the whole state. I don't want to travel through the whole state and find out little towns got a whole set of rules they're going by.
Oh,
I
that's a
think these guys
possibility.
want the same
Mhm.
training all the way through the state, so they know how to, respond to the situation.
And thank you for
They
that.
understand what I mean. So I think everybody, that's on the computer, kind of like start having some discussions.
Thank
Not
you.
alone. You're here because somebody put you here. Go talk to those people.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from the board, either present or online, before I accept motions for us to adjourn? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move that we adjourn this meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hands, eyes, whatever you want to do. Excellent. I call the meeting at 7:46 PM, and thank you all very much for your patience, attentiveness, and passion tonight. Take care. Happy holidays, y'all.
Happy holidays, everybody. See ya.
Happy holidays, everybody.